My name is Braxton, 32 years old, and I never thought my sister Haley would betray me like this. After driving 10 hours to attend her engagement dinner, I stood at her doorstep only to hear those crushing words, "Oh, we had it yesterday. Only family." The pain of that moment was nothing compared to the week that followed. I smiled, left, and made a decision that would change everything between us. Before I share my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like and subscribe button, and stay tuned to see how I turned this family betrayal into a valuable life lesson. Growing up, Haley and I were inseparable despite our 4-year age difference. She was always my little shadow, following me around our suburban Michigan home with bright eyes and endless questions. I never minded. In fact, I loved having her around. Our childhood was pretty standard until I turned 14 and Haley was 10. That's when our parents decided their 20-year marriage wasn't working anymore. The divorce was messy, filled with late-night arguments and tense custody discussions. Our mother gained primary custody while our father moved 3 states away and started a new family. He promised to visit regularly, but those visits became less frequent with each passing month. Mom had to work 2 jobs to keep us afloat, which meant I became the default caretaker for Haley. Every day after school, I'd rush home to make sure she had a snack, help with her homework, and listen to her talk about her day. I learned to cook simple meals, do laundry, and even braid her hair for special occasions. It wasn't always easy, especially when I wanted to hang out with friends or focus on my own schoolwork, but seeing Haley's smile made it worthwhile. When I turned 16, I got my first job stocking shelves at the local grocery store. My first paycheck went toward buying Haley a beautiful silver bracelet with a heart charm for her 12th birthday. I still remember how her face lit up when she opened the box, how she threw her arms around me and declared I was the best brother in the world. That moment cemented our bond in a way nothing else could. By the time Haley entered high school, I had graduated but postponed my college plans. Mom was struggling with medical bills after a brief hospitalization, and we needed the extra income. Instead of pursuing my dream of becoming an engineer, I took a full-time position at an auto parts manufacturing plant. The pay was decent, and the manager was understanding when I needed time off to attend Haley's school events. "You'll go to college later," Mom would say, patting my shoulder. "Family comes first." I believed that with every fiber of my being. So when Haley was accepted to 3 prestigious universities during her senior year, I didn't hesitate to offer financial help. By then, I had worked my way up to a supervisor position and had some savings. Between my contribution and a partial scholarship, Haley was able to attend her top-choice school without taking on massive debt. Those 4 years were challenging but rewarding. Haley called regularly, sharing stories about her classes, new friends, and campus activities. I visited whenever possible, proud to see her thriving in an environment I could only dream about. She was studying business administration and talked about starting her own company someday. I had no doubt she would succeed. Everything changed during Haley's final year of college when she met Trevor. He was a finance major from a wealthy family with connections in all the right places. Their relationship progressed quickly, and suddenly our phone calls became less frequent. When we did talk, Haley seemed different, more concerned with appearances and status than ever before. "Trevor's taking me to the Hamptons next weekend," she'd say. Or, "Trevor's father is introducing me to the CEO of his company." I tried to be supportive, happy that my sister had found someone who could give her opportunities I couldn't. But there was an underlying tension in our conversations, a growing distance I couldn't bridge. Haley graduated with honors, and I took time off work to attend the ceremony. She introduced me to Trevor briefly, then whisked away to meet his parents at an exclusive restaurant for a celebration dinner. My invitation was notably absent. "It's just a small family thing," she explained when I asked about it later. "We'll celebrate together soon, I promise." That celebration never happened. Haley moved to Chicago with Trevor, and our communication dwindled to occasional text messages and holiday phone calls. I continued my life in Michigan, dating occasionally, but never finding someone who stuck. My free time was spent taking night classes at the community college, slowly working toward the degree I had postponed for so long. Despite the growing distance, I never stopped trying. I sent birthday gifts, holiday cards, and random texts just to check in. Sometimes Haley responded warmly, reminding me of the close relationship we once had. Other times her replies were short and dismissive, but I always held on to hope that our bond was unbreakable, regardless of the miles or lifestyle differences between us. I couldn't have been more wrong. The call came on a Tuesday evening in April. I was just getting home from work exhausted after a 12-hour shift dealing with equipment malfunctions and staffing issues. My phone lit up with Haley's name, something that had become increasingly rare over the past 2 years. Braxton. Oh my God, you'll never believe what happened. Her voice was bursting with excitement, a tone I hadn't heard from her in years. What's going on? I asked, kicking off my work boots and collapsing onto my couch. Trevor proposed. We're engaged. My exhaustion evaporated instantly. Despite our strained relationship, hearing the joy in my sister's voice brought a smile to my face. That's amazing, Haley. Congratulations. Tell me everything. For the next 30 minutes, Haley described in detail how Trevor had orchestrated an elaborate proposal at an upscale restaurant overlooking Lake Michigan. There was a private dining room, dozens of roses, a violinist playing their favorite song, and finally Trevor on one knee, presenting a diamond ring that was, as Haley repeatedly emphasized, absolutely massive. It's 4 carats, Braxton 4. All the girls at work are absolutely jealous. Trevor's family has connections with a jewelry designer in New York. I listened attentively, offering appropriate exclamations of admiration, even though the details felt somewhat foreign to my own lifestyle. What mattered was my sister's happiness. I'm so happy for you, Haley. When's the big day? There was a slight pause before she answered. Well, that's actually part of why I'm calling. We're thinking about a fall wedding, but... Her voice dropped slightly. Trevor's parents aren't exactly thrilled about covering the entire cost. Oh, I said, sensing where this conversation was heading. They're willing to pay for the reception venue and catering, but they think we should contribute to the rest. Trevor's trying to establish himself at his firm, and I'm still paying off some student loans, so money is kind of tight right now. I gazed around my modest apartment, the secondhand furniture, the outdated television, the stack of community college textbooks on my coffee table. Money was tight for me too, but Haley didn't ask about that. How much are you thinking you'll need? I asked. Another pause. Well, for the kind of wedding we're planning, probably around $25,000. I nearly choked. That amount represented almost all of my savings money I'd been putting aside for my own education and eventually a down payment on a small house. But this was Haley, my little sister who I'd practically raised, who I'd always promised to support. I think I can help with that, I said finally. Really? Her voice pitched higher with excitement. Oh my God, Braxton, you have no idea how much this means to me. This wedding is going to be everything I've ever dreamed of. The gratitude in her voice made the decision easier. Over the next few days, I liquidated most of my investments, canceled the vacation I'd been planning to take that summer, my first real vacation in years, and even sold my beloved classic Mustang that I'd been restoring in my spare time. Within a week, I transferred $25,000 to Haley's account. She called immediately after receiving it. You're the absolute best brother anyone could ask for, she gushed. I can't wait for you to meet Trevor's family and friends. We're having an engagement party next month. You have to come. I wouldn't miss it for the world, I replied sincerely. Perfect. I'll text you all the details. It's going to be at Trevor's parents' country club. Very fancy, so wear something nice. Okay. I agreed, already mentally cataloging my limited wardrobe and realizing I'd need to invest in a new suit. After we hung up, I immediately requested time off work, researched hotels in Chicago, and started planning the 10-hour drive. This was an important moment in my sister's life, and despite our growing differences, I wanted to be there for her. The promised details about the engagement party were slow to arrive. I had to text Haley several times over the next few weeks before she finally sent a brief message with a date, time, and address. No information about accommodations, parking, or other logistics. Still, I was determined to make it work. I scheduled 2 days off from work, booked a modest hotel about 20 minutes from the venue, and purchased a new suit that strained my already depleted budget. The week before the party, I called Haley to confirm everything. Oh yeah, we're still on, she said, sounding distracted. Trevor's parents have invited a lot of their friends, so it's going to be quite the event. Just be ready to mingle with some pretty important people. I'll do my best, I promised, trying to ignore the hint of apprehension in her tone. The day before my departure, I texted Haley one last time to let her know when I expected to arrive. Her response was a simple thumbs-up emoji. Not exactly the warm excitement I'd hoped for, but I brushed aside my concerns. Maybe she was just busy with preparations. I packed my bag, gassed up my car, and prepared for the journey to Chicago, completely unaware that I was driving toward one of the most painful experiences of my life. I set out at dawn on Friday, hoping to beat the worst of the traffic. My economy car wasn't the most comfortable for long trips, especially compared to the Mustang I'd sacrificed to help pay for Haley's wedding, but it was reliable. The early summer morning was beautiful. Clear skies with the promise of heat later in the day. I had a thermos of coffee, a carefully curated playlist, and genuine excitement about seeing my sister. The first few hours of the drive were peaceful. I crossed through Michigan into Indiana as the sun climbed higher, thinking about how much Haley and I had been through together. Despite our growing distance in recent years, I was hopeful this weekend would help reconnect us. Perhaps meeting Trevor's family would give me better insight into the world she now inhabited. Around midday, things started to go wrong. A major accident on I-94 caused a 2-hour delay, with traffic barely inching forward under the increasingly hot Sunday. My car's air conditioning struggled to keep up, and I could feel sweat soaking through my t-shirt. Still, I remained positive. A little traffic wouldn't ruin this weekend. After finally clearing the accident scene, I stopped for lunch and to refill my gas tank. While waiting for my food at a roadside diner, I spotted a small gift shop next door. On impulse, I decided to buy something special for Haley and Trevor, in addition to the formal gift I'd already purchased online, an expensive crystal vase from their registry that had further strained my budget. The gift shop had a collection of handmade items from local artisans. I found a beautiful wooden picture frame with intricate carvings around the edges. It seemed perfect, something meaningful but not ostentatious. The shopkeeper wrapped it carefully while I paid, mentioning that the craftsman was a 90-year-old veteran who had been making these frames for decades. Each one tells a story, she said warmly. No two are exactly alike. Back on the road, the weather took a turn for the worse. Dark clouds gathered, and soon I was driving through a thunderstorm so intense that many cars pulled over to wait it out. I pressed on cautiously, my windshield wipers working overtime. The storm added another hour to my journey. By late afternoon, my GPS indicated I was within 30 miles of Chicago when my fuel light came on. I hadn't anticipated how much gas I'd burned sitting in traffic, and now I was nervously watching the gauge drop toward empty. The next exit was still 5 miles away, according to the signs. I reduced my speed to conserve fuel anxiously, counting down the miles. I made it to the gas station with the warning light blinking ominously. As I filled the tank, I checked my phone and saw that it was already 5:30. The engagement party started at 7, and I still needed to check into my hotel and change into my suit. There was no way I'd make it on time. I called Haley to let her know I was running late. The call went to voicemail. I texted instead, "Hit some traffic and weather. We'll be there around 7:30. Save me some champagne." No response came as I navigated the Chicago suburbs, following my GPS toward the hotel. When I finally arrived at 6:15, exhausted and stressed, the front desk attendant couldn't find my reservation. "I'm sorry, sir, but it looks like your booking is for tomorrow night, not tonight." I stared at her in disbelief, then checked my confirmation email. She was right. In my haste to arrange everything, I'd selected the wrong date. The hotel was fully booked for tonight, with a convention in town occupying most available rooms in the area. "Is there anything you can do?" I pleaded. "I've been driving for over 10 hours. The attendant made a few calls but couldn't find me a room. "You might try some places further out from the city," she suggested sympathetically. There wasn't time. I thanked her and decided to head straight to Trevor's parents' country club. I could look for alternative accommodations later. The bathroom in the hotel lobby would have to suffice for changing into my suit. 20 minutes later, somewhat refreshed and properly attired, I was back on the road. The country club was located in an exclusive suburb north of the city, an area with manicured lawns and massive houses set back from tree-lined streets. The contrast with my working-class neighborhood back home couldn't have been more stark. The country club itself was imposing, a sprawling stone building with perfectly landscaped grounds and a parking lot filled with luxury vehicles. I parked my modest car between a Mercedes and a BMW, feeling increasingly out of place. Grabbing my gifts from the back seat, I checked my appearance one last time in the rearview mirror and headed toward the entrance. It was 7:45 when I approached the main doors. No greeter was present, no sign indicating a private event. In fact, the building seemed oddly quiet for what should have been a bustling engagement party. Still, I pushed through the doors into an elegant lobby with marble floors and crystal chandeliers. A staff member approached immediately. "Can I help you, sir?" "I'm here for the Wilson Parker engagement party," I said, using Trevor and Haley's last names. The staff member looked confused. "I don't believe we have that event scheduled for tonight." My stomach tightened. "It's supposed to start at 7. Trevor Wilson and Haley Parker." He checked a tablet. "Oh, the Wilson Parker event was last night, sir." Last night. The words didn't make sense initially. There must be some mistake. I pulled out my phone and double-checked Haley's text. No, she had definitely specified today's date. "Are you sure?" I asked weakly. "Yes, sir. It was quite a lovely event." Concluded around 11 p.m. I thanked him mechanically and walked back to my car, mind racing. Had I somehow misunderstood? Was there another event tonight at a different venue? I tried calling Haley again. Still no answer. With no other option, I punched Haley's address into my GPS. She and Trevor had purchased a house in the suburbs about 6 months earlier, a house that I realized with growing unease I had never been invited to visit. 20 minutes later, I pulled up in front of a handsome 2-story colonial with pristine landscaping. Light glowed from several windows indicating someone was home. I sat in my car for a moment trying to process what might be happening before finally gathering my gifts and approaching the front door. I rang the doorbell and waited, heart pounding. After what seemed like an eternity, the door opened to reveal a tall man with perfectly styled hair and a casual but clearly expensive sweater. Trevor. We had met only once before, briefly at Haley's graduation. His expression shifted from neutral to surprise to something resembling annoyance in the span of seconds. "Braxton," he said, making no move to invite me in. "What are you doing here?" "I'm here for the engagement party," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I know I'm late, but the traffic was terrible, and then there was this mix-up at the hotel." Trevor's perfectly manicured eyebrows drew together. "The engagement party was yesterday." Before I could respond, Haley appeared behind him. She was wearing yoga pants and a tank top, hair pulled back in a messy bun. Definitely not dressed for hosting an event. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "Braxton, what are you doing here?" "I'm here for your engagement party," I repeated, still clutching the wrapped gifts. "The one you invited me to." Haley and Trevor exchanged a look that made my heart sink. It was a look of shared annoyance of being inconvenienced, not the look you give when a loved one arrives unexpectedly. "That was yesterday," Haley said, her voice strangely flat. "Didn't you get my text?" "What text? You told me it was today. Friday at 7. She pulled out her phone, scrolled briefly, then frowned. "Oh, I guess I forgot to send the update. We had to change it to Thursday because the venue had a scheduling conflict." The excuse sounded hollow, especially given the country club employee's lack of confusion about the date. He hadn't mentioned any last-minute changes. "Can I come in?" I asked, still standing awkwardly on the doorstep. Trevor stepped aside reluctantly, and I entered a foyer with high ceilings and expensive-looking artwork. The house smelled of scented candles and something cooking, a normal evening at home, not the aftermath of a changed party plan. "I drove 10 hours to be here," I said, following them into a spacious living room. "Took time off work, booked a hotel, which I apparently can't even use tonight." "That's really unfortunate," Trevor said, not sounding particularly sympathetic. "But things change quickly when planning events like this." Haley sent updates to everyone else. Everyone else. The phrase hung in the air like a slap. "Why don't you sit down for a minute?" Haley offered, gesturing to a pristine white sofa that looked like it had never been sat on. Would you like some water or something? I remained standing. So, how was it? The party. Oh, it was wonderful. Haley brightened instantly. Trevor's parents invited all their friends from the club, and his colleagues from the investment firm came. My boss was there too, and some of the girls from work. As she spoke, I noticed a collection of framed photos on a side table that hadn't been there when I entered. Stepping closer, I saw they were pictures from the engagement party, professionally taken photographs in elegant frames. Trevor in a tailored suit, Haley in a stunning blue dress, both of them surrounded by well-dressed guests raising champagne flutes. I picked up one of the frames. The timestamp in the corner clearly showed yesterday's date. This wasn't a last-minute change. This was planned. Sounds like quite the event, I said quietly. Lots of people there. About 70 or so, Trevor replied casually. Just the essential people. Essential people. Another phrase that cut deep. I don't understand, I said, looking directly at Haley. Why wasn't I told about the change? Why wasn't I invited to the actual party? Haley shifted uncomfortably. It was really more for Trevor's family connections and our work colleagues. You know, networking. You wouldn't have known anyone there. I would have known you. Yes, but... She trailed off, looking to Trevor for help. He stepped in smoothly. It was a very specific crowd, Braxton. High-level executives, potential clients for my firm. The kind of people who can help advance careers. And I'm not that kind of person, I stated flatly. Well, let's be honest. Trevor continued, his tone condescending. You work at an auto parts factory. These were senior partners at international law firms, hedge fund managers, people with vacation homes in Aspen. The conversation wouldn't exactly have been stimulating for you. I looked at Haley, waiting for her to defend me, to object to Trevor's characterization. She said nothing, just studied her manicure with sudden interest. So the party was for family and important people, I said slowly. And I'm neither. That's not what we meant. Haley finally spoke. It's just, you live so far away, and you're so busy with your work. We didn't think you'd want to make such a long trip just for a cocktail party. Yet here I am, having made exactly that trip. Which we appreciate, Trevor interjected. But really it wasn't necessary. The wedding is the important event, and of course you'll be there for that. I glanced back at the photos. In one I could clearly see Haley's friends from college, the same friends I'd helped her move into her dorm, the ones I'd treated to dinner when money was tight for them. In another, an older couple I recognized as Haley's godparents stood smiling with champagne glasses. You said it was only family, I said quietly. Family and close connections, Trevor corrected. Her godparents were there. Your college roommate was there. I pointed to different faces in the photos. Your yoga instructor was there. Haley at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. It's complicated, Braxton. There were expectations from Trevor's family about who should be invited. And I didn't make the cut. It's not like that, she protested weakly. Then what is it like? Because from where I'm standing it looks like you deliberately excluded me from your engagement celebration after I gave you $25,000 for your wedding. Trevor's eyebrows shot up. $25,000, Haley said. You contributed $5,000. I laughed bitterly. Of course she did. Haley flushed. I didn't want you to feel like you had to contribute so much. It's not like you're wealthy. No, I'm not. I sold my car to help pay for your wedding. The car I've been restoring for 3 years. Silence fell over the room. Trevor looked at Haley with something resembling disappointment. Haley stared at the floor. Look, Trevor finally said clearly, there's been some miscommunication. But what's done is done. The party happened, you missed it, and that's unfortunate. But dwelling on it won't change anything. His dismissive tone was the final straw. 10 hours of driving, thousands of dollars spent, years of supporting Haley emotionally and financially, all reduced to an unfortunate miscommunication. You're right, I said, placing the photograph back on the table. What's done is done. I handed the wrapped gifts to Haley. Congratulations on your engagement. I hope the wedding is everything you've dreamed of. You're leaving? Haley asked, suddenly concerned. But you just got here. Where will you stay? I'll figure something out. I always do. I turned toward the door, then paused. By the way, how are you liking the house? Is it working out well for you both? The question seemed to confuse them. It's perfect, Haley replied cautiously. Why do you ask? I smiled thinly. Just curious. I'll see myself out. As I walked back to my car, I felt a strange calm settling over me. The hurt was still there burning beneath the surface, but something else was emerging clarity. For years I had prioritized Haley's needs above my own, believing that's what family did for each other. Tonight had shown me the harsh truth, that devotion wasn't reciprocated. I started the engine and pulled away from the perfect house with its perfect lawn and the imperfect relationship it contained. It was time to reclaim some of what I had given away so freely. I didn't drive back to Michigan that night. Instead, I found a modest motel near the interstate, paid for a room with my nearly maxed-out credit card, and collapsed onto the bed fully clothed. The events of the day swirled in my mind, preventing sleep despite my exhaustion. Around 3 in the morning, I finally accepted that rest wouldn't come and opened my laptop. The soft glow illuminated the sparse room as I navigated to my banking app and stared at my savings account balance, $1,812. A pitiful sum considering I'd had nearly $30,000 just a few weeks earlier. What Haley and Trevor didn't know, what I hadn't mentioned during our confrontation, was that the house they were living in actually belonged to me. Our parents had purchased it as an investment property years ago, and when they divorced, neither wanted the hassle of managing it. They signed it over to me on my 25th birthday, likely assuming I would sell it and use the proceeds for my education. Instead, I'd kept it as a rental property, using the income to supplement my factory wages. When Haley and Trevor were looking to move to Chicago, I'd offered them the house at a significantly reduced rent, just enough to cover the property taxes and basic maintenance. It was my wedding gift to them, though I hadn't framed it that way. I didn't want Haley to feel indebted. Now, staring at my depleted bank account, I wondered if that generosity had been a mistake. Had it, like so many other gestures, simply reinforced Haley's perception that my resources were hers for the taking? I opened another browser tab and pulled up the rental agreement. It was informal. Too informal, I realized now. The lease term was open-ended, the rent well below market value, and the utilities were still in my name. I had been paying the water, electricity, gas, and even the internet bills directly, considering it part of my gift to them. A gift to someone who couldn't be bothered to include me in their engagement celebration. Someone who lied about how much I had contributed to their wedding. Someone who it seemed was embarrassed by my presence in their new, elevated social circle. By dawn, I had made my decision. I spent the morning on my phone making calls and sending emails. First to my lawyer inquiring about the proper procedure for terminating a month-to-month lease in Illinois. Then to the utility companies requesting that service remain active but billing be transferred to the occupants' names effective immediately. Next, I contacted a real estate agent in Chicago who specialized in rental properties. The market was strong, she informed me eagerly. If I decided to rent the house at market value, I could easily get 3 times what Haley and Trevor were currently paying. If I wanted to sell, she had several potential buyers already looking for properties in that neighborhood. Let me think about it, I told her. I'll get back to you in a week or so. My final call was to a locksmith. I explained that I owned a rental property and needed to ensure I had access in case of emergency. The current keys had never been returned by a previous property manager, I claimed. Could new locks be installed? They could for a fee as long as I provided proof of ownership, which I had. By checkout time, I had set in motion a series of changes that would alter my relationship with Haley forever. I wasn't doing this out of pure vengeance, though the hurt still pulsed freshly. This was about self-preservation, about establishing boundaries that should have existed long ago. The drive back to Michigan was quieter than the journey out. No excited anticipation, no carefully selected playlist, just the hum of tires on asphalt and the occasional guidance from my GPS. I stopped once for food and fuel, otherwise driving straight through, arriving home late Saturday evening. Sunday was spent catching up on laundry, preparing for the work week ahead, and ignoring the 3 text messages from Haley asking if I had arrived home safely. Let her worry for a change, I thought, though a part of me felt guilty for the pettiness of that decision. Monday morning, I stopped by my lawyer's office before heading to the factory. He reviewed my situation and confirmed my next steps, a formal written notice to Haley and Trevor, informing them that their rent would be increased to market value in 30 days as permitted by the terms of our agreement. If they chose not to accept the new terms, they would have 30 days to vacate the premises. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, after preparing the document. "Family disputes can get messy." "I'm sure," I replied, signing my name. "Some messes need to happen." I asked him to mail the notice directly to the house return receipt requested. Official documented impossible to ignore. Then I headed to work, focusing on the tasks at hand rather than the storm I had just set in motion. That evening I logged into my utility accounts and confirmed the transfer requests had been processed. Water, electricity, gas, internet, all now in Haley and Trevor's names. They would need to establish their own payment methods within 7 days to avoid interruption of service. The system had automatically generated notification emails to the address I had on file for them, an email Haley rarely checked. For the next few days, I went about my life as usual. Work, community college classes, a quiet dinner with a coworker who had been subtly expressing interest for months. I didn't mention the situation with Haley to anyone. It felt too raw, too personal to share. On Thursday evening, exactly 1 week after the engagement party, I had missed my phone rang with Haley's number. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately, and again. On the 4th call, I finally answered. "The house has no electricity," Haley said without preamble, her voice tight with panic. "No water either. Even the Wi-Fi is gone. What's happening? Did you send the money for the bills?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself against the familiar urge to rush in and fix everything for her. "I transferred the utility accounts to your names," I said calmly. "You should have received notification emails." "What? Why would you do that without telling me?" "I did tell you. Through the proper channels. Just like you told me about the engagement party." Silence on the line. Then, "Is this because you're mad about the party? That's so childish, Braxton." "It's not about the party," I replied, though we both knew that wasn't entirely true. "It's about establishing appropriate boundaries. You and Trevor are adults with good jobs. There's no reason you can't pay your own utility bills. But we're not prepared for this Trevor's between paychecks, and I just had to put a deposit down with the wedding planner. We don't have extra cash right now." "That sounds like a budgeting issue, not a me issue." "Braxton, please." Her voice softened, taking on the pleading tone that had worked so effectively in the past. "Just cover the bills this month. I promise we'll figure something out for next month." "No." The firm response surprised us both. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean no. I'm not covering your utilities anymore. I'm not subsidizing your rent anymore either. You'll be receiving official notice soon, but the rent is increasing to market value next month." Her gasp was audible. "You can't do that. We had an agreement." "Yes, a month-to-month lease agreement that either party can modify with proper notice. That's what I'm doing. But we can't afford market rent in this neighborhood. That's why we took this house in the first place. Then you'll need to find somewhere more affordable." "This is insane," she spluttered. "You're punishing me over a stupid party." "I'm correcting an imbalance that's existed for far too long." I corrected her. "You're living in a house I own, paying a fraction of its value because I wanted to help, but that help wasn't appreciated or acknowledged. It was expected, taken for granted." "That's not true," she protested. "I appreciate everything you've done." "Do you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're embarrassed by me. Like I'm good enough to fund your lifestyle, but not good enough to stand beside you when you celebrate major life events." It wasn't like that, she insisted, though her voice lacked conviction. "It was exactly like that. Only family, remember. Except your definition of family seems to include everyone but your brother." "You're twisting my words." "I'm quoting them directly." I took another deep breath. "Look, Haley, I'm not trying to ruin your life. I'm just no longer willing to sacrifice mine to elevate yours. The utilities will be turned back on once you set up payment methods. The rent increase is happening, but you have time to make alternative arrangements if needed." We can't just find a new place in 30 days. The housing market is insane right now. Then pay the market rent. It's still going to be less than what you'd pay for a comparable property. There was a long pause then. I heard muffled voices. Haley was covering the phone, presumably talking to Trevor. When she came back on the line, her tone had changed. "Trevor wants to talk to you." Before I could object, his voice came through the speaker, clipped and businesslike. "Braxton, this is completely unacceptable. We had an arrangement. An arrangement you've benefited from considerably, while treating me like an unwelcome outsider. That's a gross exaggeration. One missed invitation doesn't justify this kind of retaliation." I laughed humorlessly. It wasn't just a missed invitation. It was a deliberate exclusion, followed by lies about my financial contribution to your wedding. But honestly, those were just the final straws. This has been building for years. We can take legal action, you know. This could be considered constructive eviction. I've already consulted my lawyer. Everything I'm doing is well within my legal rights as the property owner. But by all means, pursue legal action if you feel it's warranted. Just be aware that litigation might uncover other issues, like the fact that you've been claiming mortgage interest deductions on your taxes for a property you don't own. That was a guess on my part based on Trevor's meticulous approach to financial advantage, but the silence that followed suggested I'd hit the mark. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go. I have an early shift tomorrow." "This isn't over," Trevor warned. "You're right about that," I agreed. "It's just beginning." I ended the call and set my phone to Do Not Disturb mode. Then I sat in the quiet of my apartment, feeling neither triumph nor regret, just a strange, hollow certainty that I had finally done what was necessary. For the next week, my phone was flooded with calls and texts from Haley. I read them all but responded to none. The messages evolved from angry accusations. "I can't believe you would do this to your own sister," to bargaining, "What if we increase rent by just 20%, to emotional manipulation. Mom would be so disappointed in how you're treating me." That last one stung, but not enough to make me reconsider. My lawyer confirmed that the formal notice had been delivered and signed for. The utilities had been transferred successfully, though the companies reported that no payment methods had been established yet. Services would be disconnected again, if not addressed soon. 9 days after our phone confrontation, Haley called from a number I didn't recognize. Caught off guard, I answered. "Please don't hang up," she said quickly. "I'm calling from work because I know you're ignoring my regular number." "I'm not ignoring you. I'm giving you space to process the changes." She laughed bitterly. "Process the changes, Braxton. We're living in a dark house with no running water. Trevor has to shower at his gym before work. I'm filling water bottles at the office to flush the toilet. It's humiliating." "I'm sorry you're experiencing that," I said, genuinely meaning it despite everything. "But the solution is simple. Set up payment methods with the utility companies." "We don't have the money right now, that's what I've been trying to tell you. Trevor's bonus got delayed and we've already committed to so many wedding expenses. Cancel some of those expenses. Downsize your plans." "We can't do that. Invitations have already gone out. Deposits have been paid." Her voice cracked slightly. "I don't understand why you're doing this. Is $25,000 really worth destroying our relationship?" Our relationship was damaged long before money entered the picture. The money just made the damage more visible. "What are you talking about?" I sighed, wondering how she could be so oblivious. "Haley, when was the last time you called just to ask how I was doing? Not to ask for money or help, just to check in." Silence. "When was the last time you visited me in Michigan? I've driven to Chicago multiple times, but you haven't made the trip once since you moved." More silence. "When Trevor got that promotion last year, did you even think to tell me? I found out through a Facebook post 3 weeks later." "I've been busy," she said defensively. "Building a career, planning a wedding, adult responsibilities." "And I haven't had adult responsibilities?" I asked incredulously. "I've been working since I was 16. I put my education on hold to help support you. I've managed a rental property, invested my savings, all while working full-time and taking night classes." "That's different." "How? How is it different?" "It just is. Your life is simpler. The condescension in her tone confirmed everything. My life isn't simpler, Haley. It's just less important to you than your own. She didn't deny it, which was perhaps the most honest part of our conversation. So this is it, she finally asked. You're just cutting me off completely. No, I'm establishing boundaries. I'm asking you to treat me with the same respect you'd give any landlord or utility provider. Pay your bills, pay market rent for the house, and we can start rebuilding our relationship on more equal footing. And if we can't afford market rent, then you find somewhere else to live, like any other adult would. There was a long pause before she spoke again. The wedding is in 4 months. You're still coming, right? Still walking me down the aisle? The question was so disconnected from our current reality that I nearly laughed. Let's address the immediate issues first. Get your utilities turned back on. Decide whether you're staying in the house. Then we can talk about the wedding. I already told everyone you're giving me away. Dad's not in the picture and you're the obvious choice. I was also the obvious choice for the engagement party. Yet here we are. You're never going to let that go, are you? She snapped. It's not about letting it go. It's about acknowledging what it represented. Another long silence. Then, in a smaller voice, what if we can't fix this? That's up to you, Haley. I've been trying to maintain our relationship for years with very little reciprocation. Now it's your turn to try. By paying you rent, she asked incredulously. By treating me like a person whose feelings and contributions matter. The rent is just a tangible expression of that respect. I could hear someone calling her name in the background. I have to go, she said. My boss needs me. Okay. This isn't fair, Braxton. None of it. Maybe not, I conceded. But it's necessary. After we hung up, I sat at my desk for a long time, staring at the framed photo of Haley and me at her college graduation. We were both smiling, her arm around my waist, mine across her shoulders. We looked like a team. When had that changed? Had it been gradual, or was there a specific moment when she decided I no longer fit into her vision of the future? The next day, my bank notified me of a large deposit into my account. $25,000 from Haley Parker, with the memo line reading simply, "Wedding fund returned." It wasn't what I had asked for, but it was something. A recognition, however, reluctant that things needed to change. I transferred the money into my savings account, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in weeks, I slept through the night without waking to anxious thoughts. 2 days later, I received an email from Trevor, cold and formal, informing me that they had secured alternate housing and would be vacating my property within the 30-day notice period. No mention of where they were going or how they had resolved their financial situation. Just a business-like notification of their intent to comply with the lease termination. I forwarded the email to my lawyer and the real estate agent. The property would need to be inspected after they moved out, perhaps some updates before it could be rented again at market value. The agent was confident she could have new tenants within weeks. The rental income would allow me to reduce my hours at the factory, take more classes, perhaps finally complete my engineering degree. It felt like the end of something, but also the beginning. A reclaiming of my own life priorities after years of putting them second to Haley's needs. I wasn't sure if our relationship could be salvaged, but I was certain that continuing as we had been would have only led to more resentment and pain. The final communication came 3 weeks later, a text from Haley. We're moved out. Keys are with the neighbor at 310 Maple. Do what you want with the furniture. Most of it was yours anyway. No mention of the wedding. No invitation to visit their new place. No acknowledgement of the seismic shift in our relationship. Just practical information coldly delivered. I texted back a simple, "Thank you," and left it at that. The ball was in her court now. 3 months passed with no communication from Haley. The house was inspected, cleaned, and rented to a young professional couple at full market value. My financial situation improved considerably, allowing me to cut back to part-time at the factory and increase my course load at the community college. I was on track to transfer to a 4-year university the following fall, a goal I had deferred for over a decade. Then, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, I received a letter in the mail. Not an email or text, but an actual handwritten letter on expensive stationery. Haley's handwriting familiar yet strange after all these months of digital communication. I sat in my car in the apartment parking lot, rain drumming on the roof, and read her words. Dear Braxton, I've started this letter a dozen times over the past few weeks, never quite finding the right words. Perhaps there are no right words for how thoroughly I've failed you as a sister. It took losing our home, returning your wedding money, and facing the reality of our strained relationship for me to truly see what I had done. Not just with the engagement party, but for years before that. I took your love and support for granted. Worse, I began to see it as an obligation rather than the generous gift it was. Trevor and I are no longer together. The stress of our sudden move and financial readjustment revealed cracks in our relationship that couldn't be repaired. But if I'm being honest, those cracks were there long before. His values and priorities influenced me in ways I'm not proud of. I began to measure worth by income and status rather than character and loyalty. I allowed myself to become someone who would exclude her own brother from an important celebration because he didn't fit a certain image. I'm not blaming Trevor entirely. These were my choices, my failings. I'm writing to take responsibility for them and to ask not for forgiveness yet, but for a chance to begin making amends. I've found a modest apartment and a new job with a smaller company that better aligns with my original career goals. I'm reconnecting with old friends who knew me before I became so focused on climbing social ladders. If you're willing, I would like to meet for coffee, just to talk. No expectations, no requests, just two adults who share a history, and perhaps, if I'm very fortunate, might share a future as well. With love and genuine remorse, Haley. I read the letter 3 times before folding it carefully and placing it in my glove compartment. My emotions were too tangled to formulate a response immediately. Part of me wanted to rush to her to offer the unconditional forgiveness that had been my pattern for so long. Another part remained cautious, wary of falling back into unhealthy dynamics. After 2 days of reflection, I texted Haley coffee, sounds good, Saturday at 10, the place on Main Street. Her response came immediately. I'll be there. Thank you. That Saturday morning was bright and crisp autumn, asserting itself in the red and gold leaves that drifted along the sidewalk. I arrived at the coffee shop early, selecting a table by the window, where the sunlight created pools of warmth on the worn wooden surface. Haley arrived precisely at 10, looking both familiar and changed. Her designer clothes and perfect makeup had been replaced by jeans, a simple sweater, and a more natural appearance. But the most noticeable difference was in her eyes. The slightly defensive pride was gone, replaced by something more vulnerable and authentic. We ordered our coffees and sat in awkward silence for a moment before both speaking at once, then laughing nervously. You go first, I offered. I just wanted to say thank you for meeting me, she began. I know you had every reason to ignore my letter. I considered it, I admitted. But we're family. That still means something to me. She winced slightly at the implied criticism, but nodded. I deserved that. I lost sight of what family really means. What happened with Trevor, I asked, curious but trying not to sound judgmental. Haley sighed. After we moved out of your house, we found a luxury apartment we could barely afford. Trevor insisted we maintain appearances even as we struggled to make rent. The engagement party had introduced us to a social circle where weekend trips to Martha's Vineyard and $500 dinner tabs were normal. I was trying to keep up, while also planning a wedding that kept growing in scale and cost. She paused to sip her coffee. About a month after we moved, Trevor's parents invited us to dinner. They asked about our new living situation, and Trevor lied. Said we had upgraded to a better neighborhood. His mother mentioned visiting, and I could see the panic in his eyes. He was embarrassed, I guessed. Yes, just like he was embarrassed by you. Just like I allowed myself to become embarrassed by my own background. She met my eyes directly. That night I realized I was becoming someone I didn't recognize or particularly like. Someone who valued appearance over substance. So you ended it. Not immediately. I tried to talk to Trevor about scaling back, about being more authentic. He accused me of not being committed to our future. Said his colleagues' wives would never suggest living below their means. She laughed humorlessly. Below our means? We were already living well beyond our means. The final straw came when I suggested postponing the wedding until we were on more solid financial footing. Trevor said he'd already told too many important people. Canceling would damage his professional reputation. That's when I realized I was just an accessory to his career ambitions, the right kind of wife to complete his executive image. I nodded, understanding all too well how people could be valued for what they represented rather than who they were. So you broke off the engagement? Yes. Returned the ring, moved out that weekend. It was simultaneously the hardest and easiest decision I've ever made. She twisted her bare ring finger unconsciously. My new apartment is tiny. My new job pays less. But for the first time in years, I feel like myself. I'm sorry it didn't work out, I said, meaning it despite everything. I know you cared about him. I cared about the idea of him, the lifestyle he represented. She reached across the table, hesitating just short of touching my hand. What I regret most is how I treated you. You were always there for me, always supporting me, and I repaid that by pushing you aside when it was convenient. It hurt, I acknowledged. Not just the engagement party, but the years of feeling like our relationship had become transactional, like I was valuable for what I could provide, not who I was. I know, and there's no excuse for that. She finally bridged the gap, resting her fingers lightly on my wrist. I'm not asking for things to go back to how they were. That relationship wasn't healthy for either of us, but I'd like to build something new, something balanced and respectful. I studied her face, looking for signs of the manipulation that had become so familiar. Instead, I saw only earnest regret and cautious hope. I'd like that too, I said finally. But it will take time. Trust doesn't rebuild overnight. I know. She withdrew her hand. I'm prepared to put in the work for as long as it takes. No expectations, no demands. We spent the next 2 hours talking. Really talking. In a way we hadn't in years. Haley asked about my classes, my goals, my friends. She listened attentively, asking follow-up questions that showed genuine interest. I shared my plans to transfer to the university, my hopes of eventually designing automotive safety systems. In turn, she told me about her new job at a small marketing firm, her modest apartment that she was furnishing piece by piece from thrift stores, the cooking classes she had started taking. There was a lightness to her I hadn't seen since before college, a genuineness that had been buried beneath layers of aspiration and pretense. As we prepared to leave, Haley hesitated. There's something else I wanted to ask you. What's that? I'm looking for a place to volunteer. Giving back to the community, you know. I remember you used to mentor at the Boys and Girls Club. Is that something they still need help with? The question surprised me. It was so different from anything she would have asked a year ago. They always need volunteers. I could introduce you to the coordinator if you're serious. I am. Very serious. She smiled tentatively. Maybe we could even volunteer together sometimes, if that wouldn't be too weird. I'd like that, I said, returning her smile. We parted with a brief, slightly awkward hug, promising to meet again the following weekend. As I watched her walk to her car, not the luxury vehicle Trevor had insisted she lease, but a sensible used sedan, I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness exactly, not yet, but an openness to the possibility. In the months that followed, Haley and I rebuilt our relationship one careful step at a time. We volunteered together at the Boys and Girls Club, had dinner every other Sunday, even attended a community college basketball game where she cheered embarrassingly loud when I told her one of my classmates was playing. She never asked for money, never made unreasonable demands on my time, never prioritized appearances over substance. When she was short on rent one month, she picked up extra shifts rather than calling me. When she wanted to visit our father for Thanksgiving, she saved for her own plane ticket. The most profound change came 6 months after our coffee shop reunion. I had been accepted to the engineering program at the state university and was trying to figure out how to balance work, school, and living expenses. I've been thinking, Haley said during one of our Sunday dinners. I know the apartment near campus is expensive, and you'll need to cut back hours at work to focus on your studies. I tensed, slightly old patterns triggering wariness. Was this leading to her asking to move in with me, to share expenses? I'd like to help, She continued, noticing my reaction. Not with money. I know that's not appropriate given our history, but I have time. I could help you move, organize your apartment, maybe meal prep on weekends, so you don't live on ramen. Just practical support, the kind you always gave me. The offer brought unexpected tears to my eyes. It wasn't grand or flashy, but it was thoughtful, considerate of my actual needs, rather than what she thought I should want. I'd appreciate that, I managed to say. Haley smiled, clearly relieved. Good. That's what family does, right? Shows up for each other in ways that actually help, not just ways that look good or feel convenient. Right, I agreed, recognizing the hard-won wisdom in her words. That night driving home, I reflected on the journey we'd taken. The pain and betrayal had been real, the damage to our relationship significant. But from that broken foundation, we were building something stronger, healthier, and more authentic than what had existed before. I had learned to establish boundaries, to value myself enough to demand respect. Haley had learned that true connection comes from genuine care and mutual support, not social climbing or material displays. We were both still learning, still making mistakes, but moving forward with clearer understanding of what family should mean. The engagement party exclusion that had once felt like such a devastating rejection now seemed almost like a gift, a painful but necessary wake-up call that forced us both to confront patterns that had been damaging our relationship for years. Sometimes the deepest love isn't expressed through grand gestures or financial sacrifice. Sometimes it's shown through respect for boundaries, through consistent small kindnesses, through honest communication, even when it's uncomfortable. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone, and for yourself, is to say no when saying yes would perpetuate harmful patterns. Family isn't defined by unconditional giving or taking. It's built on mutual respect, reciprocal care, and the courage to hold each other accountable for how we treat one another. That's the lesson Haley and I both needed to learn, and though the teaching was harsh, the wisdom gained was worth the price. Have you ever had to establish difficult boundaries with someone you love? Do you find it harder to say no to family than to friends or colleagues? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. Remember to like and subscribe if this story resonated with you, and share it with someone who might be struggling with similar family dynamics. Thank you for listening. And remember, loving someone doesn't mean letting them take advantage of your generosity. Sometimes the strongest form of love is the kind that comes with healthy boundaries.